Okay, everyone. Hello. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us remotely as well. Can you hear me well from home? Yes, thank you. So, as you know, today we'll have a 1 hour and a half, more or less, of a session about the ShareFamily. The program includes different presentations spanning on what we are developing right now as a new pilot project, which is a support to the PALSI Consortium for e-resources interlibrary loan. Then we will have a presentation concerning the linked data entity editor that we have developed, JCricket, which will illustrate the best practices that we are developing to use this tool in a shared environment such as JVD or the other ShareFamily tenants. And the third part is dedicated to a proposal that we have elaborated for the membership of a new model of participation to the initiative in terms of contribution to developments and a new way of cooperating with us as ShareFamily team and among the participating institutions. I read from the chat that there is a lot of feedback with the audio, so I hope we can fix a little bit. Now we're going to check. Lot of echo. Okay, we're going to check that with the technicians. Thanks, Thurston. With that, I think we can start. We have the first presenter, who is Jill Morris, presenting remotely from Palsy, and I'm going to share the screen with the slide deck for Jill. And there you go.
All right. I think we got that up. Do you see it, Jill?
Yes.
All right, good.
Is my audio okay? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can everybody hear me
Yeah,
all
looks
right?
good.
Okay, great. Well, good morning. Thank you for having me today. So my job is to just sort of set the stage and provide a little bit of context for some of the explorations that we are doing in partnership with a number of organizations today. To give you a little bit of background on PALSI, PALSI is the Partnership for Academic Library Collaboration and Innovation. It's a consortium of 82 academic and research libraries, sort of in the mid-Atlantic, northeastern United States. And one of the things that we do together as a consortium is we run a service called Easy Borrow, which is a large regional consortial borrowing network. We support interlibrary lending across our member organizations using a central system. Sebastian's going to talk more about that in a moment, but we use the platform called Reshare to support and connect our 82 academic and research libraries together using this consortial ILL platform, where all of the libraries are running different ILS systems, they're running different discovery layers, and they're doing cataloging separately. So that's just sort of the background for it. But many of our organizations join PALSI because of this service in particular. And we process thousands of requests each month. It's designed to be very streamlined. And right now, the focus of our Easy Borrow service is really around print ILL. So we're sharing our physical collections together across these institutions. In light of that, of course, the world is changing. It has been changing for a number of years now. Our libraries are purchasing more and more electronic content. And for a consortium that is really based around the idea of sharing as much of our collections as possible, we determined that we needed to figure out ways of better enhancing that service to support all different types of sharing, including electronic content and materials that our libraries are investing in, and they want to be able to share across these organizations. So we started having conversations with the folks at Share and, of course, with our many other partners there in the room, who you'll hear from each of them today. And really what we wanted to do was to determine whether we could enhance borrowing among our member institutions and focus it on a really specific kind of practical question, which is, can we make ebook borrowing work sort of as smoothly as print borrowing does for our end users today? So Sebastian, we'll go to the next slide, please. Great. All right. So, as I mentioned, we've got a number of collaborators working together. One of the things that we've been able to do is really harness some of the partnerships that we have in place already amongst PALSI and then some of our member organizations. We have two that are collaborating as part of this pilot, Lehigh University and NYU, New York University. And then in partnership with a couple of different technology providers, of course, the ShareFamily folks, as well as Index Data, who we've partnered with on building out the Reshare platform, which we use for our interlibrary lending service. We've largely solved for print ILL. We definitely feel like we still have room to make it more efficient and scaled across different organizations. But as you all know, ebooks are a totally different problem because the licensed digital content sort of sits at an interesting point between sort of infrastructure and, of course, rights management and metadata quality, and being able to support and scale that work requires sort of interesting new configurations that will allow us to make it happen in a way that makes sense for our users. So this project is really bringing together our consortium, which is very focused on figuring out scale and efficiencies, and then our technology partners who we've worked with very closely, who have really deep expertise and a focus on open standards, which is, again, very, very important to us in a diverse academic regional library consortium. And our goal is really to determine whether we can enhance the infrastructure that we have already in order to meet the needs of that ebook ILL workflow. So PALSI, together with Lehigh and NYU, embarked on this multi-phase, vendor-neutral and standards open-based proof of concept. And we are thinking of it as a proof of concept. It's really an exploration that is happening alongside of several other kind of initiatives here within the PALSI consortium to determine how we can position ourselves to share electronic content by enhancing our current system and continue to focus on that interoperable resource sharing. Go ahead to the next slide, Sebastian. All right, so we've got kind of two phases outlined. We're still in the first phase. And the first part of this is really about looking at our sort of metadata overall and figuring out how to improve discovery infrastructure for our users. We can't route a request correctly without having the metadata conversations about what is needed in order to allow us to position electronic content right alongside of the print content in ways that make sense to an end user who is accustomed to, scrolling through Amazon and looking for, the same title and determining what format they might like to receive that content in. So we're thinking about that kind of similarly here. And we know that we need to be able to leverage linked open data in order to do that and to support that kind of interoperable discovery that we're looking for. So the first phase is really about looking across our collections, thinking about what foundations we need to put in place in order to support the types of matching that we want to see, so that when a user is looking at our service, they can determine for themselves what kind of materials they want and actually be presented with both at the same time without being driven into two separate flows. So we're looking at the discovery infrastructure first. And then in a second phase, we're going to come back and talk about how we do fulfillment. And we have some sort of separate projects and explorations where we're talking about this and what we want to have from a user experience standpoint in terms of fulfillment as well. But in that phase two, we imagine designing secure ILL workflows for licensed digital content discovery. Got some ideas about that, and maybe we can touch on that a little bit. How to integrate the metadata and rights management into that process and allow for that secure delivery, and then how to evaluate the technical architecture for cross-institutional fulfillment when it's first. So as I mentioned, right now we're loaning print books through our system, but we would very much like to be able to enhance that, to be able to present the user with some choices. And so this is really an evaluation. We're doing an assessment to figure out if this is going to work for reshare and for our member libraries to be a practical way forward. You can go ahead, Sebastian. All right, great. So this is my last slide. And, I think one of the things that I can do to just kind of demonstrate how challenging it can be is we've got these 82 different libraries. We've got thousands of requests coming in every single month. We've got 82 different ways of cataloging. And all of that, all of those records end up being merged into a shared index in our resource sharing platform, EasyBorrow. When that comes together, we have ways of dealing with bringing titles together and doing some matching in order to put together records that make some kind of sense for patrons. But the moment you introduce many of those matching algorithms, they break. They don't present the user in a single record with, even if the title is the same. At this point, we don't have a good solid way of doing that efficiently across our member institutions. And so it creates all sorts of challenges associated with that. And because we're in the discovery phase as the first part of this project, that is something we're really interested in doing. So we're really trying to figure out here how we can improve that user experience and the discovery across our member institutions without necessarily having to go back in and recatalog everything so that everybody's using the same systems and same approaches. And we want to be able to build a really scalable approach to this, to reduce the duplication of effort across our institutions and to ensure that we can provide access to that digital content, much like we do for the print. And I think this has been our focus area. And so we're really excited about this exploration and what it will show us, how we can learn from it. Whether or not we're able to take what we have and really build on it, or if what we find out is that we need to do some additional work in order to support that. So we're very excited about this. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Sebastian, who's going to talk to us a little bit about reshare.
Thanks, Jill. I had the audio off just to try to reduce the echo. That was great. Thank you very much. So hello, everybody. I'm Sebastian. I'm the co-founder of Index Data, which is a small Danish-American software company that's been working in library technology for the past 32 years. In the past 10, 11, 12 years, that work has been dominated by the Folio Library Service Platform and Project Reshare, as well as other types of collaborative projects that we do with different communities of interest. So Reshare was launched as a collaboration between a group of resource sharing consortia and Index Data and some others back in 2018. And it is the vision behind it was to create a community-owned software infrastructure for libraries to collaborate around sharing their collections. And it's currently in production in the US. It was launched as a national solution for Australia around the change of the year. And it is used in a limited scale in Germany at the moment, with some plans to potentially make it the national solution there as well. So since the first consortium, which was Palsy, went live around 20, it has really grown in uptake and interest. It's governed by a steering committee and a product team, a group of subject matter experts, and Index Data serves as kind of the shepherds of the technology. And we are responsible for operating it as a service for those people who want a hosted solution. So this is kind of where we're at. It's worth noting that when Reshare was launched as a community, the focus really was on print materials. returnable print materials shared within a consortium. And we've been on sort of a mission since those early days of growing reshare's reach into the digital realm. So some of that work has focused on initial work to support non-returnables, so to support delivery of electronic copies of articles and book chapters. We also did a lot of work in collaboration with the Boston Library Consortium to explore controlled digital lending until that became fraught in the United States because of the lawsuits against the Internet Archive and so on. So we have been meandering on a roadmap towards greater support for digital fulfillment and reshare almost since the launch of the project, all done sort of as a compromise of available resources and the needs of the consortia that are using the software. So for me, the work on this project really fits into that context. So the current data flow in reshare, as Jill mentioned a little bit, is built around the idea of aggregating catalog and holdings information from the libraries participating in the consortium. We pull together streams of updates, incremental updates over time, often using OEI PMH these days, but otherwise using manual updates. That data becomes aggregated in a tool that was built by the project, by Index Data for the project, called Reservoir, as a tool to aggregate streams of data. In that tool, we do a couple of different things. One is we normalize holdings information in concert and conversation with each library. So every system is going to represent holdings information slightly differently, even different libraries using the same system. There's an onboarding process that takes place when a library joins Reshare, where we figure out how to normalize holdings information, and that becomes important for this work too. Then we build clusters so that as you look at the holdings of a whole consortium, you get hopefully sort of a single view of a bibliographic instance across those consortial members. And to that end, we have been working over the years with Goldrush to borrow their algorithm that they have nicely shared with us. And we have sort of re-implemented that algorithm in the context of Reservoir. And that gives us cluster IDs that allows us to present kind of a unified or singular view of a collection. That consolidated stream of data is fed into an instance of ViewFinds, which has been extended and tweaked to support consortial applications, in particular to support integrations with Reshare so that we can feed requests from the discovery tool into Reshare. And so we can provide a means by which patrons and libraries using Reshare can log in using their local library ID and see what requests they have outstanding. And that's the flow. At the same time, Reshare uses that same Reservoir instance to map a bibliographic identifier to a list of holdings, and that's used to create a routing list or a rota for each request. And that's where we're at, and that has worked reasonably well for a number of years now. So the problem that we're trying to solve with this particular collaboration between Reshare and Share touches a number of different things. The first one is the clustering that we're doing is just kind of okay. The Goldrush algorithm tends to be very picky about little differences in cataloging practices, which can work reasonably well in a homogeneous consortium where everybody is copy cataloging from the same site. But once you get into groups that are more heterogeneous, where you have mixes of small and big libraries, potentially different practices for maintaining catalogs, you can end up with a lot of different versions of the same thing in the catalog. And that does at least a couple of different things. It's very frustrating for the user because they don't know which one to pick. It also means that by and large, the lending string or the rota becomes shorter than it has to be because the user might pick one, and that's the one that we use as a basis for routing a request. That means that we are less likely in a way to fulfill a request successfully. So we've kind of been on a mission over the years to try to figure out how we could do a little bit better. And one of the limitations that we set for ourselves was that we didn't want to create permanent identifiers. It has to be something that we could pull up our tent poles and move along. And there's different reasons for that. One was to keep costs down. Another, quite frankly, was to avoid situations where somebody might come and challenge our right to build an aggregation of metadata for whatever reason, right? So there has been a tendency to avoid creating structures that were too permanent. What Share does in this situation is create an opportunity for us to use a service that is designed to maintain permanent representations of bibliographic identity and loop that into our system. So we can get some of the benefits of our lightweight system while working with a partner that can assist in maintaining bibliographic identity. So for me, conceptually, when we think about the future of bibliographic infrastructure, there's something really interesting there. So the other issue we've had is that the Gold Rush algorithm by design keeps electronic and print things completely separate. It is never going to match an E and a P record by itself, right? And in the pilots, when we have talked about what will be the desirable results for end users, for either staff librarians or for patrons, what's ultimately desired is a view of the different delivery options that you might have for the same title. You might have a preference for the E version, but you might be prepared to accept print if E is not available. How do you resolve that in a situation where those two are kept deliberately separate as metadata objects? What Share can potentially do for us is to create a more trustworthy relationship between the instances representing the digital and the print version of these things. And we want to play with those in the pilot and help gain some experience. And finally, I think there's a real interest in seeing what can entity browsing do to help decision-making around ILO workflows. If we have very easy and clear access to information about the related instances, say there is an earlier edition than the one that the patron asked for, or a later one, can we better support things from a workflow perspective, or even give the patrons better choices to make, right? So there's a curiosity about, can we move beyond the very Mark-centric singular records with no connection to each other that we find in ViewFind today to something that provides a richer view of the metadata. So how are we going to do this? The flow we imagine is that we will continue to use Reshare's reservoir module to aggregate and normalize holdings information. As Jill hinted at, we have the additional complication that whereas up to this point we have tended to weed out or remove electronic editions as being irrelevant to physical fulfillment, we now have to incorporate them. And that's raised a whole bunch of questions about how we model digital holdings, because every library tends to do it differently, and different platform providers might have a tendency to do it differently. So some of the conversation we've had has been about, can we approach a better, more robust model for talking about digital holdings that will span vendors and libraries? So this has been sort of looking at how can we extend the way that Reservoir deals with this information coming from different systems, and what constitutes enough knowledge of a digital entitlement available for access to drive a decision, right? Some libraries log all kinds of, or record all kinds of details about the business relationship with the vendor, the specific permissions, and others might just say, hey, yes, I have this thing available. How do we find, like, where do we need to sit in a consortial setting? This is one of the things we're trying to learn from the pilots. So we're going to aggregate and normalize holdings information across these consortial members. And when we will feed, we will have a feed of unclustered MARC records available for ShareVD to access. Using OAI-PMH, they will pull these records in, and then they will apply the clustering algorithm at their end. And at that point, the data will be available in Share. It can be accessed and navigated through the Share platform. You could even theoretically use JCricket to maintain or update cluster relationships if you wanted to. We will then consume those instances back, map back down to MARC, but including the identifiers for instances and works associated. So now we have a clear way to look at each record and say, which other records does this cluster together with? And how does this record relate to higher order work relationships? So we will then build clusters based on those UIs, and we'll feed them to ViewFind, and boom, we're off to the races. What we want to do from that is we want to compare. We want to see how Share does compared to Gold Rush. This will be very interesting because we have high hopes of ending with something that is more robust, because Share has the ability to take its time. It is not generating as necessarily a singular match key, right? It can apply more complex logic. And then we want to implement digital requesting as an option from within viewfinds. And then we want to implement digital fulfillment. In phase one, we have decided just to keep things simple and manageable, to focus on things that can be delivered with no DRM applied. And specifically, we want to lean into the workflows that Reshare already supports for delivery of non-returnables. So an additional to supporting returnable workflows where you do the tracking and the shipping and all the apparatus associated with tracking physical materials moving around the world, Reshare can support digital delivery as well, using its own temporary storage system. So you can upload a document for the supplier, and that document can then be delivered to a patron on the requesting side. So that's phase one. Beyond that, as we learn from the pilots, there is a lot of interest in the group in exploring what does it really look like to do ILL in an electronic context. And this feeds into conversations about the future state of ISO 18626, which has rudimentary elements to support digital fulfillment, but not necessarily a model for managing full ebook ILL. But what we'd really like to do is to have established a model and best practice for how to do ebook ILL. That could be nudged on publishers, that could be nudged on other software providers to better support libraries in sharing their ebook collections. So that's in the longer term what we're hoping to get to. But the purpose of all this is really to create a basis for experimentation and learning, and then designing the future path. So that is, I think, my piece. Thank you very much. And thanks again, Jill.
So thank you, Sebastian and Jill. We have had many different occasions to present our ShareFamily projects, but this is the first occasion to present what we are doing for this specific pilot that, as Gilles and Sebastian mentioned, is really focused on interlibrary loan and circulation services. And so specifically, from the ShareFamily side, the pilot explores how the linked open data platform, that is the technological platform behind the scene of any ShareFamily tenant, can improve metadata indexing for resource discovery and interlibrary loan. Its main object is to address a key challenging, that is reconciling multiple instances of the same work, particularly across different formats, and that is print and electronic, to support a workflow that gives priority to electronic resources, improving the user experience and enhancing resource sharing services. As Gilles mentioned, the pilot is split in 3 different phases. And about the dataset, currently the dataset that we are using for the pilots includes approximately 5.7 million bibliographic records from 3 PALCI member libraries, representing collection of different sites and containing both print and electronic resource, with very different kind of not quality, but representation, cataloging representation. And this diversity provides an excellent environment for testing whether entity-based clustering can operate across institutions and formats. The enriched metadata generated through entity resolution and the BibFrame conversion processes has been made available in a dedicated share portal. This is really the first test installation of the portal with this amount of records for Palce, of course. And the portal will demonstrate how entity-based organization improve resource discovery while preserving the original institution metadata. And it also provides catalogers with a unified view of related resources across participating libraries. And of course, as Sebastian mentioned, this is also the occasion for librarians to work together. This is just the first example we can show you about data present in the Palce portal in the current state, so as a first loading. And see here all the copies for each library contained and linked to this publication. And of course, you have here the original work, and you have here the agent who produced the author of this work. Okay, this is an example. But during the data processing phase, we identified several issues, several differences in cataloging products, in cataloging records, particularly concerning the identification and the reconciliation of records describing print and electronic resources. So we decided to perform a preliminary analysis to verify that our reconciliation clusterization logic would produce the expected results. A dedicated web application allows us to visualize the matching process and manually inspect the behavior of the enrichment rules on a representative subset of records. And of course, this helps in enhancing machine learning processing, just having under our eyes the different effect of a clusterization process. This is I give you a brief demo of this. This matching system starts from mark tag 776, which links different instances in different formats of the same resource. And using the information contained in this field, it searches the uploaded records for potential matches. The interface allows us to compare the original record, the enriched version, that is a sort of potential object, potential records that we can use for matching. And in the third column, all candidates matches, making the matching process fully transparent and easy to be evaluated. I give you a brief example of this. This is an example of what the matching portal can present. This is the ideal scenario. So all records that produce good results. In this scenario, the system successfully identified the corresponding print records in all three participating institutions using the LCCN identifier and combining other fields. So you have here the original records from our starting point. You have here the section, the 776 tag extracted by this new composed record that was not previously existent. And this is enriched with the new subfield W, so that you can have all potential record matching for these records. And here you can check the candidate for this matching. And so you can be sure that, okay, this is the correct combination. And so the case where the original record has this kind of metadata is easily solved, and we can have for sure a good result in this kind of matching. This is a good example, of course. Oh no, sorry. Okay, yes. This is, of course, the same example in the portal. So once the enrichment process is complete, the relationships will become visible in the shared environment. So different instances held by multiple institutions are grouped under the same work, demonstrating how entity modeling enhances both resource discovery and resource sharing. The relationship between a print and electronic version is not yet visible in the current version of the portal because this is the first edition, as we are still refining the matching process to identify this relationship more accurately. But I want to present also some not perfect, some wrong result, but they are very important. Again, I need to read this. These are very important to enhance the processes. This is the case where the system finds a matching record, but they all describe the print version, while the 776 field explicitly refers to an online resource. So I give you the example. And so this is, as you can see, the 776 was not enriched because the match is doubly, and so no any enrichment was done. And the cataloger, so in this case, our staff can check and improve, find other solution to find the right matching. Or we have other cases, for example, volume mismatch. In this example, the ISBN initially suggests a possible match. However, further analysis show that one record describes only one volume, only volume 2, while the candidate represents the complete 3-volume set. I show you here. And so the system therefore rejects the match, avoiding an incorrect enrichment. And also in this case, this is a suggestion to check in a different way this kind of matching. Just to close, this additional example illustrates other situations that the matching logic must handle. And of course, again, these help us in enhancing our machine learning processes and algorithms to refine. So to conclude, the pilot confirms that entity-based reconciliation can significantly improve the identification of related print and electronic resources. At the same time, it highlights areas where the matching logic can be further refined by considering additional mark fields and better handling cataloging inconsistencies. And the next step is to integrate these enrichment processes directly into the ShareFamily clustering pipeline and expose the results through the Pulsy discovery environment. Of course, as usual, for any information, any question you have here, links. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we have some questions on the chat. Maybe, oh, here it is, not in the chat, but in the QA. I'm not sure if they are for Tiziana or Sebastian, or maybe both. So the first question is, what fallback logic does the system use to find matches when an incoming record completely lacks a mark 775 tag? Maybe this one is good.
Yes, the 776 tag is an additional tag that we use to compare and to match records. But we generally use a lot of different tags in the records. So defining, for example, comparing the same title, the same edition, the same, if the 3XX fields are containing and checking the online and the print. So the 776 tag that I reported as an example is something more that is usually used to match record in reconciliation processes.
The second question is, does the Pulsy pilot include vendor-created metadata, which often is very minimal? Yes. Okay. So there are no more questions from remote participants. Any questions from the room?
Hi, I'm Todd Olson, University of Chicago. I was just wondering, so this is very early days. I'm wondering if you have any quantitative information on how effectively this is improving the matching, like kind of an error rate or anything like that. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I thought it might be very difficult to have that information at this point, but I thought I'd ask.
So the question is whether there is any data so far about whether the new approach will improve the matching and will improve the results. And I think
External data?
or any so I guess what you're really asking in some sense is how are we going to go about determining whether things are in fact better? And I think the reality is that we haven't started out with a cookbook or a specific set of metrics to hit. I think people know that there are some specific frustrations. There are plenty of examples around of where we see Gold Rush not matching things that should be matching. And I think some of the evaluation will be done by subject matter experts looking at some of those edge cases. We will be able to look at the number of clusters in one model compared to the other model. The problem is that doesn't necessarily tell you whether one number is better than the other, but we would hope for, based on the behavior of Gold Rush, I would certainly expect a smaller number of clusters as a baseline, and some of the rest will come from just a qualitative evaluation. But I think we would be very interested in exploring and talking about ways to more formally evaluate this approach against other people's approaches. Like when we have the identifiers embedded in the records, do we have the potential to share data sets and have other people maybe apply other measures against that data set? That would be a very neat step forward for us all, I think.
Yes, and in fact, the text phase will be prepared so that starting from the most critical cases in the current portal, in the current side, we can check the related result in the new portal. And so defining this test is a very delicate and crucial phase because all these critical cases need to be identified and reported just to give a good or not a good result, because this could happen, of course. And so this will suggest to, again, improve the clusterization process.
There are no other questions from the room. I think we can go ahead. It's you again. No, sorry, Christy.
Thank you. In looking at the specific properties that you are using for the clustering, I'm wondering if you have any insights that you can share or if you plan to share them about, I'm just thinking about what we can learn about remediating our own data to improve the outcomes for projects such as this, because I think this is really valuable. And I know that you can do a lot in terms of normalizing data to match, like, if the strings don't match, how can you normalize that to make it match? And I'm wondering if there are any sort of pain points that have already surfaced for you, like areas where data normalization doesn't quite cut it and might be areas that we could prioritize focusing on in our own data enrichment efforts to improve clusterization for these types of projects.
Referring to this current project or our standard project, usually in the standard project, we don't normalize the records, but in same cases, we underline some critical habits, and so that the library can provide in normalizing data. This refers to bibliographic data, because of course, as you can imagine, we receive a massive data, so it's quite impossible for big project to do this. We have done something like this in smaller project, for example, the Italian Parsifal project, because with more or less 3 million records, we provide some procedure to regularly normalize. But this is the standard project. Taking consideration that in addition to this, the ShareFamily provides some authority services. And the case of an addition of an authority services is something different, because in the authority services, we can compare the strings, propose the string that is proposed in an authority file. So it's a different but integrated processes. I don't know if a task of normalizing data refer to holdings and copy. I don't know if you have this kind of process, but in the standard process, not for bibliographic.
I think your question was about bibliographic data. Is that right?
I was primarily thinking about bibliographic data and improving matching. We're involved in a number of initiatives with similar types of, integrating data sets across multiple institutions. And I think that this is an area where how we improve those matching algorithms, we can share and maybe come up with some best practices.
So one thing that I think could be really valuable for the team would be an indication of what would be a useful data set to share. I mean, right off the bat, I could imagine a file, a table that correlates Gold Rush key with share UI, a share identifier, with standard identifiers that are found in the record as a data dump that we can share. And people would be able to sort of compare those results with whatever the algorithm is. So that could be one way to approach it. I will say that just as a side note on the holdings information, that we have had again, a lot of conversations about what do you do with digital holdings? How do you normalize across the wildly different ways that different libraries choose to represent those in the ILS? It feels like there's a fairly well-established core of what we need for physical holdings to support sharing. You know, you want your location, you want your item ID, you want just a handful of small things. And there's nothing like that for electronic resources. Like we're just lost. And it goes from people having full EIM level data in their record to people having almost nothing, just a URL to the supplier, to the platform.
If I can add briefly something, using JCricket opens different scenarios. Because as you know, but I will show you something soon, JCricket make available for each piece of information the variant form coming from different libraries. And usually selecting the is leader check, the people are have an agreement about which is the most correct form. And so in this case, you can, as library, you can import this version in your catalog to improve. So is a general consensus defined by catalogers. Okay, this is the most correct form, and other library can retrieve and update. For this reason, it's very important the connection with ILS, so that you can improve your data. But I will show you something, not showing directly, but giving you an idea about this.
Okay, thank you.
Christy, maybe a side thought would be that, especially for algorithms that don't generate a key, but that might use multiple steps and lookups, it might end up being extremely useful to have some type of record or audit trail or some kind of indication in a cluster record of why things are part of that. Because otherwise, it's one thing with Gold Rush, right? You can look at the key and say, it missed that field. But if you have an algorithm that is not sort of fully fleshed out or that involve maybe optional steps, then understanding which steps actually triggered the match could end up being really important for any kind of debugging down the road. Otherwise, you'll just see, hey, I've got two things that I thought should have matched. I don't know why they didn't.
What I present now is in a certain way related to what we are discussing with you. I'm presenting what we are doing as a CEI working group, the Sapienza Entity Identification Working Group, led by Nancy Lorimer. We are discussing the best practices for using an entity editor in a shared environment, because as you probably know, JCricket can be used locally as a local entity editor, but it was born primarily to be used in a shared environment. These best practices were created to support catalogers in making consistent cataloging and entity modeling decision while working with JCricket. And the goal of this recommendation is to provide a common framework that guides collaborative editing, promotes interoperability, and ensures that the shared knowledge base evolves in a coherent and sustainable way. The transition from record-based cataloging to entity-based data management is much more than a technical evolution. It represents a new way of organizing bibliographic information around reusable entities and relationships. Within the ShareFamily, this approach allows institutions to maintain their autonomy while participating in a shared knowledge ecosystem that promotes interoperability and international collaboration. What is JCricket? I think that you know JCricket, that is the collaborative editing environment of the ShareFamily. It allows cataloger not only to create and edit entities, but also to correct the results of automated clustering through merge and split operation. At the same time, every change can be communicated back to participating institutions, supporting synchronization between the shared environment and the local cataloging. We were specifically referred to this in our conversation. Working in a collaborative environment means that cataloging decision can affect many institutions, not just one, because you are working again in a shared environment where the contribution of many cataloging are represented. For this reason, common practices become essential to have an agreement about some rules, how to manage some piece of information. The guidelines presented here aim to ensure consistency, predictable workflows, and reliable integration across the entire ShareFamily ecosystem. The scenario, the different scenarios discussed in this presentation represent a typical situation that catalogers encounter while editing entities. Some are already supported by established procedures, while others require shared policies agreed upon by the community. Together, these practices help maintaining high data quality while respecting the contribution of all participant institutions. I give you some example of this policy that are under discussion. This is the policy 1 that is adding an additional property value. The first policy concerns one of the most common editing activities, adding a new value to an existing property. The appropriate workflow depends on the type of value involved. We distinguish between literal text strings, controlled vocabularies, terms, and the relationships to other entities, because each category follows different editing and display rules. Literal values require particular attention because their behavior depends on whether the property is defined as single-valued or multi-valued. And the isLeader mechanism that we will change the name to this mechanism, reserving the isLeader for another feature. This will be perhaps showing the portal check or something like this. Anyway, currently we call isLeader. And this isLeader mechanism allows cataloger to determine which values should be displayed to user while preserving an institutional contributor behind the scene. Mono-value property in JCricket have a different behavior and so different kind of decision. This example, for example, the has title property, illustrate a typical single value property. One value for a title has to be chosen for the end user. Different institutions have cataloged the same title with small variation. We refer here some example, such as abbreviations, numeral, or punctuation. So the same title prop, so something that has to be decided for one. And since only one title can be displayed in the portal, the community must decide the criteria to define which version best represents the entity and designate it as the isLeader value. Currently, for this policy, the community has decided the most common used. So if more than one library use the same value, perhaps this is the good one. Mono value, as I mentioned, have the characteristic that cannot be shown more than one in the portal. And this diagram illustrates how the different title variants coexist within the same entity. Behind the scene, they coexist and remain with the specific provenance indication. Every institution preserves its own contribution together with its provenance, but only one volume is designed to be presented as a leader. This allows the system to preserve all cataloging evidence while presenting a single preferred title to the user. I move this one, otherwise. And this slide shows how that decision is reflected in the system, and users see only the selected preferred title in this screen, while cataloger retain access to every contributed variant together with its provenance. And this is the check is value that is presented here. This approach combines a clean public interface with the full transparency for cataloging work. So referring to what Christy asked before, you here in this case, you can decide that, okay, if other libraries decided that this is the most correct form, I can use this form to update my title and all my record using this is leader value. Multi-value properties follow a different logic, of course. In this case, several nodes may coexist because they provide complementary information. The role of is leader is therefore not to select a single value, but to determine which nodes should be presented to the users while preserving all contributed statement, and consider that both for single and for multi-value, you can choose one for each language. So if you want to present exactly the same nodes in different languages, you can select all, so that changing the browsing of the language of the browsing, people can read the note in different languages. Again, the portal separates the public view from the editorial view, so from the JCricket sides. Users see only the notice selected for displays, while catalogers can review every contributed note and adjust the is leader designation whenever necessary as the entity evolves. So also for this, the community is claimed to have a consensus. This is another example, the policy 2, to add a property value from a controlled vocabulary. Controlled vocabularies introduce another important governance issue. Some vocabularies are intentionally open and allow new terms to be created, while others are closed and rely exclusively on predefined values. Defining when each approach should be used is essential for maintaining consistency across the shared catalog. The interface helps catalogers selecting existing control terms by presenting URI-based suggestions as the type. This encourages the reuse of existing concepts rather than create duplicated values, thereby improving interoperability throughout the ecosystem. Of course, these are only some of the policies that are under discussion. The policies presented so far, of course, are the beginning, the starting of this work. But other important topics include protecting data contributed by other institutions, define governance for controlled vocabularies, establish criteria for removing entities or relationships, and identifying authoritative external sources. Together, these policies provide the governance needed for sustainable collaborative cataloging, and all these policies are under discussion. Some of the policy are not still available on JCricket, so this group will also discuss which kind of additional feature JCricket has to present and which related policies need to be developed. If you have any question about this, just to let you know that the group is, the CI working group is discussing this. So if other people are interested to discuss, you are welcome, of course. Thank you very much. If you have any questions.
In the meantime, I'm checking if there are questions from online participants. I can see one. If multiple member libraries disagree on the authoritative form of a title, how does JCricket arbitrate who gets to set the leader flag?
No, no. I think that this is a good exercise to take a decision because, of course, for end users, for mono-value fields, you have to take a decision for them, for end users. This doesn't prevent that as a library, you continue to use your form. So the leader just affect what the end user of the specific of the shared portal will see. But for your data, because each information maintains the provenance, you can also decide that in your scheme, your variant of the title, in this case, is presented. Just take a decision for the shared portal for the benefit of end users. And this is really a good occasion to discuss and to be able to have a common decision.
If there are no other questions, we can go ahead. Okay. So now we are getting to the final part of the program, where I will show what we are calling distributed development community, meaning that in the last few months we have developed a new form of cooperating both with members, so with institutions that are part of the ShareFamily, as well as with external parties, external institutions that might want to work with us to use the LOD Platform Technology and maybe also contribute to its technical developments. This is a way to expand the participation, to encourage a community development process, and also expand and disseminate the technical know-how that we have created over the years, and also this sort of distributing the long-term management of the software and preserving in a long-term approach. So so far, the ShareFamily has been steered by what we call Advisory Council, which is a steering group formed by representatives of members' institutions, and by Casalini and Netcult as technology providers and stewards of the initiative itself. So this means that the decisions are made by, driven by libraries in partnership with Casalini and Netcult, so with us as technical team. And so we like to underline that this is has always been in terms of governance model. So this ShareFamily and the ShareBD project, the National Bibliography Project, and all the other tenants of the ShareFamily have always been library driven. What we have discussed and proposed to the Advisory Council in the last month is to expand this form of participation and create this, again, what we have called the distributed development community, where we have identified sort of a more structured governance model, which is, again, composed by the Advisory Council as the steering group, by Casalini and Detcult as stewards of the platform, mostly from a technological viewpoint. A new component, which we call the Technical Governance Committee, which would be responsible for analyzing new contribution to the developments and informing the process for the contribution to be taken over by the initiative and the following development. And all this would form this distributed development community. So again, the roles on these slides are pretty much what I've just described. So and again, we believe that this would foster even more than now the participation both of members and non-members. So the linked data community, the library community, has the opportunity to work with us and to contribute to the development of the software that we use and in general to the initiative. This part of the presentation is a sort of simulation of how this process would work. So the background was this new sort of approach, but in practice, how would it work? So there will be these various groups, these various components of the governance structure that I've already mentioned, and the contribution to the technical work would work in the form of request for contribution from a member institution, for example, or an external party who submits a request for contributing to the developments. And right now, we already have a number of resources and tools available, both in terms of documentation as well as in terms of public APIs that are already available to be consumed, depending on the specific use case that the request for contribution wants to address. So we have, in this process, we have identified 3 types of scenarios that might occur. We call them level A, level B, level C, meaning that there might be requests for contributions that can be implemented with the resources already available. So with the APIs that are already there in the LOD platform software and with the existing documentation and so on. The level B means that the request for contribution needs some additional resources, some gaps to be filled in order for the request to be fulfilled, while the level C requires a more substantial amount of technical developments and resources, both from the ShareFamily team, technical team side, as well as maybe for the external contributor. Here, there are some examples. There is a little bit of details. I'm not going into the very details of that, but just to show you examples of some use cases. So the level A, which we said would be the easiest one to achieve. So with the existing resources. In this case, we have an example where for example, an institution member of the ShareFamily wants to act as an external consumer of the APIs. So this party would like to set up a public querying service. And this can be done already using the APIs, the LOD platform APIs that are already available. Specifically, the search APIs are public and are available also on our public documentation. And so in this case, the request for contribution has a high level of autonomy for the requester. So this is very easy to be implemented. The second case addresses format transformer, for example, meaning that a party might want to transform non-marked data and convert their original data into some other format by using our tools and infrastructure. And in this case, there are some gaps to be filled because the set of APIs that we have right now must be completed to fulfill this use case. So that's why in the process we have labeled this case as a medium autonomy level for the contributor. The same as the third example. For example, we might want a pre-ingest validator that runs on a set of data that we need to process. So before ingesting the data, a validator needs to be created. And there are some parts of the tools that we already have can cover this case, but some more developments are needed to validate the record before the ingestion and detect the errors and perhaps correct them. These are cases where the autonomy level of the contributor is even lower. We are talking about examples like an external authority source to be connected to the LOD platform. So a sort of, I would say, not maybe a huge work, but more substantial work to be implemented to connect a new source, or extending the current ontology model, for example, or again other examples that might concern very specific domains in terms of the data that the LOD platform can manage. This is a sort of a summary of what I have just described as a schema of the various types of use cases and autonomy level for the contributor and the gaps that need to be filled. And then there is the workflow that would be followed from the initial request from the external party that wants to develop a new piece of the software, and how it goes through the pipeline of accepting the requests and putting the work in place. So we might identify, as I said, some use cases or a need that a member institution has to create a new feature, a new workflow, and this is passed through the request for contribution submission. So the request goes into a standard workflow, for example, through a Jira service management platform or other forms that we might identify to track the request and to share it with our team. Then, as I said, since we have structured components in this sort of governance model, the request is also validated by the technical governance team committee. So not only by the technical team, but also by other members in the advisory council. And then there is a technical assessment phase, of course, that it is needed to identify what can be done, what cannot be done yet, but needs additional developments and so on. And then there is the practical part of the developments that follows a sort of structured flow, meaning that we can agree with the developers, external developers, to work in the same way that we used to do, for example, following some time-boxed sprint development cycles, or the external party can work autonomously and then just integrate the final piece of software that they have developed. This can be agreed. And of course, there is a technical review of the software, of the new component that is developed, to make sure that it does not misalign, it does not deviate from the how the LOD platform, currently existing LOD platform, has been structured, the final approval, and the final release. And then the new feature can be integrated in the LOD platform package. I think this is it. I realize that it's a bit, maybe not too much technical, but maybe a bit formal in the way it has been structured. But I think that the value of this new process, aside of the technicalities and all the formalities of the process, is for us to be able to share what we do also in practice. And practice meaning not only as we have done so far, so involving libraries in our working groups in terms of entity modeling and metadata modeling and discussions, but also in terms of technical development. So this is sort of next level of cooperation that we want to implement. I think I have done, and we even have 5 minutes for any additional questions. Let me see if there is anything in the chat. Thanks. Yes, I take the chance to mention that as Serena has posted in the chat, that the slides and the recording will be shared on our channels, on the ShareFamily wiki specifically on this page, but we will share it also via email and with through our other channels. I don't see any other questions on Zoom. Anything else that you want to share also on previous presentations? Okay. Oh, okay, right now. Okay, this might be too technical for me at this stage, but let's see. In phase 3, when the dedicated Bitbucket repository is created for a new contribution, does it come preloaded with boilerplate code or templates to help the contributor get started quickly? Yes, this is definitely too technical for me, but thanks, Ishak, for the question, and let me take note of that, and we can certainly get back to you. Yes, I think I would simply guess the answer, and the goal for us today was to illustrate the process, while the technicalities will really be managed by our lead technicians, who will follow the actual request for contribution and development process. So my knowledge sort of stops here. Yes. Thank you anyway. Let me take note of the question. And thanks everyone, both in the room and online. I will leave the webinar open another few minutes in case of any last minute questions. Thank you, Jill, for being there remotely.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Thank you. Okay. Yes. Yes.
As you know, it's a habit to have a workshop during LA, and one then in conjunction after the BIPSHEM workshop in Europe that will take place mid-September in Barcelona. And so this is an opportunity to have a second one in time zone European based that facilitates also the participation from SHARE colleagues in Asia. We hope that some of you or many of you can participate remotely, if not in person, and the date will be September the 9th, wrong, or the 10th, okay, and details will follow. Thank you all. It's really only with conversations, with you all that we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.